His Excellency Mr. Pedro Luis Pedroso Cuesta, Permanent Representative of Cuba as Vice Chair. His Excellency Mr. Neville Melvin Gertze, Permanent Representative of Namibia as Vice Chair. His Excellency Mr. Jaime Castillo Hermida, Permanent Representative of Nicaragua as Vice Chair. And His Excellency Mr. Armanata Christian Tiawan Nasir, Permanent Representative of Indonesia as Vice Chair. I have been informed that the committee is still in consultations about the vacant post of Rapporteur and one Vice Chair. Before we proceed with the election, are there any comments or questions? If there are no other requests from the floor, I shall take it that the committee approves the proposal just made and unanimously elects His Excellency Mr. Sheikh Niang, Permanent Representative of Senegal to the United Nations, as Chair of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. I also take it that the committee unanimously elects as Vice Chairs His Excellency Mr. Pedro Luis Pedroso Cuesta, Permanent Representative of Cuba to the United Nations. His Excellency Mr. Neville Melvin Gertze, Permanent Representative of Namibia to the United Nations. His Excellency Mr. Jaime Hermida Castillo, Permanent Representative of Nicaragua to the United Nations. His Excellency Mr. Ahmanata Christiawan Nasir of Indonesia to the United Nations. It is so decided. I now invite His Excellency Ambassador Sheikh Niang to take a seat in the podium and to chair the meeting.
Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank the Secretary General for his presiding over the Bureau elections. And now turning to item 3 on the agenda, I have the distinct honor of giving the floor to Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who has taken the time to be with us and will deliver a statement. You have the floor, Mr. Secretary General.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, continues to pose a significant challenge to international peace and security. The promise of the independence of the Palestinian state remains unfulfilled. Political, economic, and security conditions across the occupied Palestinian territory are deteriorating as Palestinians experience high levels of dispossession, violence, and insecurity. We urgently need to intensify collective efforts to resolve the conflict and end the occupation in line with United Nations resolutions, international law, and bilateral agreements. The goal remains 2 states, Israel and an independent, democratic, contiguous, viable, and sovereign Palestinian state, living side by side in peace within secure and recognized borders on the basis of the pre-1967 lines, with Jerusalem as the shared capital of both states. There is no plan B. Excellencies, I'm encouraged by recent engagement between senior Israeli and Palestinian officials. I urge both sides to expand this context to encompass underlying political issues. Piecemeal approaches to the question of Palestine will only ensure that the underlying issues perpetuating the conflict remain unaddressed. Unilateral steps and illegal actions that drive the conflict must cease. Incitement to violence will lead nowhere and must be also rejected by all. I'm concerned by unabated violence across the occupied Palestinian territory, including settler violence and military operations that have led to numerous deaths. It is essential that all parties solidify the cessation of hostilities and support economic development in Gaza. Concerted efforts are essential to ensure calm, strengthen Palestinian institutions, restore hope, and avoid a deadly escalation of violence. Illegal settlement of activity, demolitions and evictions also continue, including in East Jerusalem, undermining international humanitarian and human rights law and feeding hopelessness, animosity, and diminishing prospects for a negotiated solution. All settlement activity is illegal. It must stop. Continued human rights violations against Palestinians significantly impede their ability to live in security and develop their communities and economies. I also call on all parties to preserve the status quo at the holy sites in the old city of Jerusalem. Excellencies, as the international community works towards reviving the political process, we must support efforts to improve the economic and humanitarian situation in the occupied Palestinian territory. I am pleased by vital support for the UN humanitarian flash appeal, ongoing reconstruction efforts in Gaza, and critical COVID-19 response efforts by the UN system on the ground. I remain concerned about the dire fiscal situation facing the Palestinian Authority, which is undermining its institutional stability and ability to provide services to the people. At the same time, UNRWA's existential financial crisis is affecting the rights and well-being of Palestine refugees across the region. I call on Member States to increase their financial support to the Palestinian people and their contributions to UNRWA, a vital pillar of regional stability. Let me also note recent Israeli decisions to increase the movement of goods and people in and out of the Gaza Strip. While a welcome development, it is important to expand such steps and work towards a full lifting of debilitating closures in line with UN Security Council Resolution 1860. Excellencies, time is running short. We cannot lose sight of the long-sought goal of ending the occupation and realizing a two-state solution. All parties must take concrete steps that will enable a return to the path of meaningful negotiations and ultimately a just and lasting peace. The United Nations is committed to supporting Palestinians and Israelis to resolve the conflict. Let us reinforce our shared commitment to this goal, and I thank you.
I thank the Secretary General for his statement and the words of encouragement addressed to the committee. I would like to express our committee's sincere appreciation to you for your continued commitment to resolving the question of Palestine. Allow me now to make a statement in my capacity as chair of the committee to mark the first meeting of the committee in 2022. Monsieur le Secrétaire Général,
Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, dear distinguished colleagues, distinguished delegates, allow me first of all, on behalf of all of the members of the United Nations Committee for the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, to sincerely thank the Secretary General for the honor that he has done us by presiding over the process of renewing the committee's bureau. The Secretary General's presence at our important meetings demonstrates his personal commitment and that of the United Nations for a lasting solution to the Palestinian question on the basis of international law and the relevant resolutions of our organization. Excellencies, dear colleagues, I next turn to you to express my sincere gratitude and, above all, the gratitude of Senegal for the honor and privilege that you have just accorded me and us once again by approving my re-election to chair our committee, thus at the same time also reiterating your confidence in my country. I accept this re-election humbly and assure you of Senegal's continued commitment and that of its President, His Excellency Mr. Macky Sall, to continue with you our shared efforts to fulfill the mandate of our committee as contained in Resolution A/Res/3376 of the 10th of November 1975. That is to say, to work for the full realization of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely congratulate on their re-election to the Bureau the ambassadors and permanent representatives of Afghanistan, Cuba, Namibia and Nicaragua, and I very much also congratulate the ambassador and permanent representative of Indonesia on his election as a colleague who recently took up his post, and I wish him a warm welcome among us and wish him every success in his role. Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, your readiness and your commitment to the committee are a measure of your respective countries' remarkable contribution to promoting the effectiveness of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, which I am pleased to welcome here. Mr. Secretary General, allow me last to underscore the highly appreciated qualities of the men and women working in the Division for Palestinian Rights who support us in the fulfillment of our mandate. Their work has been and continues to be so remarkable in service of the mission entrusted to us by the United Nations General Assembly. Here we would like to encourage the division to continue in its efforts, in particular when it comes to disseminating the committee's activities in order to raise awareness among the public and to keep the Palestinian cause among the priorities of international peace and security. Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, by deciding firmly in favour of diversity and a plurality of approaches as part of its mandate, the committee is trying to improve itself and to reinvent itself constantly in a context that has become less certain due to the deadlock in the peace process and the recent developments on the ground, and also linked to the public health and economic situation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. 2021 was particularly difficult for the Palestinian people, with the continuation of the expansion of illegal settlement building, including within and around East Jerusalem and in Bethlehem, even during the pandemic, leading to an exacerbation of the social, economic and humanitarian situation in the occupied Palestinian territory, which was already weakened by restrictions on movement and access that had been imposed for decades by Israel, the occupying power. The disproportionate use of force was once again behind heavy human and material losses in May, and need we recall yet again that the Israeli settlements in occupied areas and the occupation in and of itself is illegal under international law, as is reiterated in Resolution 2334 of 2016 of the Security Council, and constitutes an additional obstacle to peace. The committee would like to recall here that if the parameters for a lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian dispute were clearly identified and are well known by all of the actors, settlement building and occupation, violence, incitement to violence, and the disastrous situation in Gaza are all factors that undermine confidence and trust between the parties. Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, committed to a peaceful settlement to the Palestinian question, the committee condemns all forms of violence and all incitement to hatred, regardless of who the perpetrators are or what the motivations are. We remain convinced that the best way to bring about the conditions for lasting peace and security between Israelis and Palestinians is to renounce all forms of violence and fait accompli policies, and to return to the negotiating table to find a comprehensive solution which assigns to each party the right to a sovereign state. Here, the committee reiterates its readiness to continue dialogue and consultation with all actors, parties to the dispute, member states, civil society, academia, refugee associations, parliamentarians, and movements of women and young people, in order to make progress with our common goal of a peaceful and lasting settlement to the Palestinian question. In order to shore up the international community's commitment to the two-state solution, we must work in the spirit of multilateralism to relaunch the peace process by putting on the table all outstanding issues such as settlements, the status of Jerusalem, refugees, security, and the situation in Gaza. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the efforts that you are making tirelessly and with your discretion to bring about a relaunch of this peace process. Here, the international community, in particular Quartet, should at the highest level support the Israeli and Palestinian authorities to bring about a positive and lasting solution to this conflict. As we will all agree, only a lasting solution will allow us to deal with all of the challenges faced by the Middle East, and which include terrorism, violent extremism, poverty, and exclusion. Here, all parties should refrain from unilateral acts that would compromise the possibility of relaunching the peace process. At the same time, it is essential for the status quo concerning the legal regime of the Holy City of Jerusalem be maintained. This must include respect for the historic and legal status quo concerning the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, and respect for the sacred nature of these holy places and the rights of the Muslim faithful to pray peacefully without threats, intimidation, or violence. Concerning UNRWA, which continues to face acute financial problems, we firmly urge member states to maintain their contributions to the agency to ensure access to predictable, sufficient and lasting resources to ensure that this needed international solidarity can reach Palestinians, including in the areas of education, healthcare, humanitarian assistance and sustainable development. Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to recall, on behalf of all of the members of the committee, the position of the United Nations on the two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security within recognized borders based on the pre-1967 lines. I think it's important to recall that because it should guide all of our efforts to achieve lasting peace. And in line with its program of work, the committee will continue to engage with member states and regional groups in order to mobilize broader support for new possibilities that may be available to make headway with the Palestinian cause. Our committee will thus support any initiative aiming to achieve the full enjoyment of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people and a just solution based on relevant United Nations resolutions that guarantees the coexistence in peace and security of two states, Israel and Palestine, according to the pre-1967 borders and with East Jerusalem as the capital of the Palestinian state. Thank you.
Je vais maintenant donner la...
I now give the floor to Ambassador Feder, the Ambassador, Deputy Permanent Representative of Palestine, to take the floor on behalf of the State of Palestine. You have the floor.
Excellencies, Mr. Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Chair of the Committee, Ambassador Sheikh Nyang of Senegal, Vice Chairs of the Committee Bureau, Ambassadors of Cuba, Indonesia, Namibia, Nicaragua, members and observers of the Committee, it is an honor for me to address you today on behalf of the State of Palestine. Mr. Secretary General, we thank you for your strong support to the Committee and its mandate to promote the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, foremost to self-determination and freedom, the indispensable basis for the enjoyment of all other human rights and a just solution to this grave injustice. As you undertake your second term at the helm of the United Nations, we pledge our full support and readiness to cooperate with you and your team to advance a just solution in line with the Charter and the relevant UN resolutions which form the foundation of the international consensus that prevails to this day in spite of attempts in recent years to negate it. On behalf of Palestine, I wish to warmly congratulate the Chair and Bureau members on their election today to lead the committee and reaffirm our gratitude to them and to all committee members and observers for their principled support for our just cause. We urge the active support and engagement by all committee members and observers in the program of work for 2022. as a just solution to the plight of the Palestinian people and even the prospect of a credible horizon to achieve it regrettably remain absent, your solidarity and efforts continue to be deeply appreciated and very much needed, including towards ensuring protection to the Palestinian people and accountability for the grave human rights violations and war crimes being perpetrated against them by Israel, the occupying power. Unfortunately, 2022 has begun just as the year that preceded it, with deep worry about the dire situation facing our people as the torment of occupation, oppression, and apartheid they have so long endured has only escalated, intensifying their needs, exclusion, and suffering at the hands of the occupying power, its military forces, extremist settlers, and terrorist militias. Even a mere glimpse back at 2021 reveals the shocking extent of the violence, colonization, displacement, human rights abuses, and the trauma, including the loss of civilian lives, among them 86 children, across occupied Palestine, including East Jerusalem, and the painful hardships borne by millions of our refugees as our people continue to be deprived of their rights, including to return, and all against the background of an ongoing global pandemic. This abhorrent reality is the reason that preeminent international human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, along with leading Israeli human rights organizations, have now reached the same conclusion long ago determined by Palestinian human rights organizations, namely that Israel is imposing an apartheid regime on the Palestinian people. The libelous accusations of anti-Semitism against Amnesty and all who speak truth to power, including Palestinian civil society that Israel has outrageously branded as terrorists, threatening their vital work and the safety and security of their personnel, are shameful, offensive, and dangerous and must be rejected. The international community must be honest and clear. This is not about anti-Semitism, but rather about policies and practices that, if committed by any other state, would be deemed illegal and inhumane. Their conclusions, just like the resolutions of the UN Security Council and General Assembly, are based on facts, on strict analysis of the reams of evidence on the basis of international law, and 2021 most glaringly exposed in May in the Israeli aggressions against Palestinian families in Sheikh Jarrah, at al-Haram al-Sharif, in occupied East Jerusalem and across the West Bank, and in ruthless military assaults on Palestinian civilians in the besieged and blockaded Gaza Strip, reaffirmed the appalling facts that war crimes and crimes against humanity are being perpetrated against our people. Women, men, children, and elderly, refugees and prisoners, none are being spared this inhumanity. Excellencies, the members of this committee and the international community at large know too well all of these facts. The reports have been before us for quite some time, but all has been to no avail. It is time to change this dismal record, so at the start of another year of the committee's work, Palestine reiterates its appeal for action, for accountability, for justice, for peace. Without action, this situation will only become more deplorable and the prospects for justice more remote as Israel becomes more emboldened in its impunity. Responsible collective action can avert the continued cycles of violence and crisis and the deprivation of rights and basic human sustenance that are making living conditions unbearable. And it can salvage the prospects for peace. It is time for pressure to come to bear on the Israeli government, which is the party that continues to violate the law and obstruct peace, as proven by yet another prime minister that rejects Palestinian self-determination and statehood and rejects peace negotiations. The passage of another year has shown that handling this situation with kid gloves will only bring more of the same. It is time to change this failing approach, to stop yielding to the intimidation and stop exempting Israel from the rule of law. It is time for accountability, including legal efforts in courts, including the ICC, and the withholding of any assistance or support to this illegal situation. The Palestinian leadership has repeatedly proven that it is a partner for peace. And despite years of hardship and despair, the Palestinian people remain steadfast. We are committed to using all diplomatic, political, legal, and peaceful popular means to oppose and bring an end to this illegal occupation and apartheid regime and to achieve our freedom and inalienable rights. We call on the international community, on all states, civil society, and all peoples who seek a world where justice, dignity, and freedom for all can prevail to support our efforts. We urge you to join the committee in upholding its mandate to work together to address the root causes of this historic injustice and to uphold international law towards achieving a just solution in line with the internationally endorsed parameters enshrined in UN resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative, and based on 2 states on the pre-1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as the capital of a sovereign and independent state of Palestine, living in peace and security alongside Israel and all its neighbors, and a just solution for the Palestine refugees in accordance with Resolution 194. We also reiterate our appeals today for assistance to the Palestinian people, including urgent funding for UNRWA, to address the humanitarian needs, alleviate hardships, and provide hope and opportunities, especially for women and youth. In closing, I reiterate our sincere thanks to the Secretary General for his presence with us today, and congratulate again the Chair and the Bureau, and thank the Committee as well as the Division for Palestinian Rights for their tireless efforts in support of the Palestinian people. We look forward to working with all of you in this year to make real progress towards a more just and peaceful future. I thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Mrs. Fed Abdel Hadi Nasser, President of Palestine, for her remarks. Now I will give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Pedro Luis Pedroso Cuesta, the Permanent Representative of Cuba, who will be speaking on behalf of the re-elected or elected members of the Bureau. Excellency, you have the floor.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I also extend my thanks to the Secretary General for having chaired this meeting at the beginning, to my colleagues, the other ambassadors who have also been elected and who are sharing this responsibility and who've given so much to these efforts. Thank you, and I thank everyone for the trust placed in me to elect me as a Vice Chair for this important forum. In exercising my functions, along with other members of the Bureau, I will work with determination and commitment to ensure tangible progress in the committee's mandate. The situation in the Middle East, and in particular the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, will need new and serious efforts by the international community and our committee to arrive at a just and lasting solution. Israel continues its severe blockade against the Palestinian people. There are human rights violations against these people, and the challenges posed by Israel to the international community are even more glaring than ever. 2021 was one of the most deadly years for the Palestinian people in more than a decade, including children, and in particular in the Gaza Strip. This was one of the worst years in terms of building of houses and an advancement in illegal settlements into the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. Israel is attacking and criminalizing civilians and humanitarian workers, and nothing happens. The Palestinian people are facing genuine apartheid, and the international community firmly rejects this. It is our responsibility to protect the Palestinian people who have a right to that protection, and to put an end to colonial occupation it is subjected to. We are beginning 2022, and the COVID-19 pandemic continues to be present in our work. That notwithstanding, we have still drafted a broad, substantive program of work which includes a number of important actions and meetings with governmental and non-governmental organizations, work with parliamentarians, with states, and in general within the UN system. To our colleagues in the committee and our Palestinian brothers, I can assure you we will continue to support you in finding a broad, just, and lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on the basis of a two-state solution, which will enable the Palestinian people to have the right to self-determination and to have an independent and sovereign state with its capital in East Jerusalem and borders prior to 1967. Thank you.
I thank the Ambassador of Cuba, and with that we shall now suspend the meeting for a few minutes to allow the Secretary General to leave the room. And once again, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your support. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to move with our agenda, and we are going to move to agenda item number 4. I know that some delegations have expressed their wish to speak, but the statements by member state will be on agenda item number 5. So when we will get there, I'll give the floor to member states. So let's move on to agenda item 4, which is the adoption of the draft program of work of the committee contained in document AC183/2022/L2 before you, which was circulated by the Secretariat to all committee members for comments last week. And I will briefly introduce the draft program to the committee. And this draft program is composed of 3 sections. Section 1 outlines the mandates of the committee and the Division for Palestinian Rights as contained in relevant resolutions of the General Assembly at the 75th session. Section 2 enumerates the activities of the committee and the Division for Human Rights for 2022. In particular, the committee under this section will continue to engage member states and regional organizations on the question of Palestine. Priorities will be centered around 4 main aspects of the mandate. Firstly, mobilization of the diplomatic community, including under subsection A, action at UN headquarters, observance of International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, and advocacy at regional and intergovernmental meetings. Secondly, subsection B focuses on raising awareness on the question of Palestine, including 2022 conferences and events, the publications program, and the website United Nations Information System on the question of Palestine. Thirdly, subsection C highlights the committee's cooperation with intergovernmental organizations, non-governmental interparliamentary organizations, as well as United Nations system entities. Fourthly and finally, subsection D informs about the planned capacity building program for staff of the government of the State of Palestine. Section 3 refers to the practice of continuing the review and assessment of the program of work activities carried out annually. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we count on your continued engagement for the successful implementation of the committee's program of work for 2022 and realization of the mandate of this committee. I now open the floor for any comments on the committee's program of work for 2022 that you might have before you adopt the draft. Are there any comments on the program of work? If there are no comments, may I take it that the committee wishes to approve its program of work for 2022 as contained in document A/AC 183/2022/L2. It's so decided. I would like now to inform you about recent and upcoming activities of the committee that have relevance for our work in 2022. Before I proceed, I wish to thank committee members and others for the strong show of support at the events organized in observance of the 2021 International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian People, held in New York and overseas on 29th of November, and the solidarity messages sent by heads of state and government. In place of the usual UN exhibit, we invited prominent civil society representatives, including Palestinian activists, to convey the solidarity messages in person or by video. And in December 2021, the General Assembly debate on the question of Palestine also considered the 2021 annual report of the committee contained in document A/76/35, drew a broad call for the realization of the two-state solution and adopted with overwhelming majorities the only tabled resolution on the peaceful settlements of the question of Palestine, A/76/L16, with 3 other resolutions being biannualized. That support is testimony of the continued relevance of the committee's work in support of the Palestinian cause and the resolutions that are firmly rooted in the UN Charter and international law. I would like to congratulate the Bureau for convening the committee meeting held on 7th of December, during which the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, briefed on the situation of human rights in the OPT. And that meeting was followed back-to-back by an event with CSOs active in the OPT and including a representative of one of the 6 CEOs designated by Israel as terrorist, Al-Haq, and an Israeli human rights lawyer. So I would like to once again congratulate the Bureau and those colleagues who were chairing those important meetings. On the 19th of January, at the Security Council open debate on the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question, I submitted a statement on behalf of the committee, and the committee highlighted the restrictions faced by civil society in the OPT and called for unhindered work in the implementation of the essential mandate. The committee called for the implementation of the provisions contained in Resolution 2334 of 2016, as well as of all UN resolutions and internationally agreed parameters to justly and sustainably resolve the question of Palestine. We also expressed once again our call for the relaunch of the peace process through the Middle East Quartet. The full text of the statement is available on the UNISPAL site that can be accessed at www.un.org/UNISPAL. On this website, you will also be able to access the different documents prepared by the Secretariat, like the monthly bulletins, weekly NGO action news, and annual compilations of UN resolutions and reports. So you will see all those documents which are regularly disseminated via email to the membership and to a growing list of subscribers, demonstrating the interest of the wider public on the question of Palestine. Turning to upcoming activities, I would like to inform about some of the upcoming events. In March 2022, the committee will hold a virtual event on the issue of quote-unquote apartheid in the OPT, featuring prominent human rights organizations, including Amnesty International. It is also planning to hold a virtual panel on the margins of the annual session of the Commission on the Status of Women. The committee's virtual events will include a discussion on illegal Israeli settlements with a focus on the case study of Hebron. Further information will be provided in the coming weeks. I encourage all of you to attend these important events. The division will organize its annual briefing session for delegates on the mandate and work of the committee and the division. Further details will be shared by the division in the coming weeks, and I encourage all delegates, particularly the new ones, to the headquarters and to the committee to take advantage of this useful briefing. Moreover, I would like also to inform that the Bureau will restart its outreach to member states to advocate for a just and lasting solution to the question of Palestine. Are there any comments on these recent and upcoming activities of the committee that I've just described? If I see no delegation asking for the floor, we can now go to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 5, statements by member state. I shall now give the floor to those delegations. I already have a list with me here. And the next on my list is, the first on my list here is Cuba. Cuba, you have the floor. I know. Yeah. You have the floor, Egypt.
Thank you very much, distinguished chairperson, my dear brother, Ambassador Sheikh Niang. First and foremost, congratulations on your re-election to chair this very important committee. Congratulations as well on assuming the chairmanship of the African Union and on winning the AFCON. Senegal is really rocking, and I hope that you would be kind enough to leave the World Cup for us poor Egyptians on the 29th of March. But on a serious note, my dear brother, let me read my statement in Arabic. السيد الرئيس، السادة الزملاء، أود في البداية.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I congratulate Mr. Sheikh Niang on his election to head the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, as well as the other members of the Bureau. The representative of Cuba and all other members. We have always supported the Palestinian people, and I thank the representative of Palestine for her statement. We know full well that the Palestinian cause is undergoing a crucial period. There are threats to the gains achieved since the Madrid and Oslo conferences. And Security Council Resolution 2334 and all the initiatives that have confirmed the importance and the relevance of the two-state solution. Currently, we are in this situation because of a lack of agreement between the two parties. Neither side wishes to see the status quo change. Ongoing Israeli violations in holy sites have led to a loss of life, and we must put an end to these violations and put an end to settlement activities, in particular in East Jerusalem, and the efforts to expel Palestinians from a number of sites. We must put an end to the housing demolition policies and attacks targeting civilians, including children. We also call for respect for the freedom of movement for NGOs. The central role of this committee is aimed at putting an end to this worsening situation through our activities by supporting the Palestinian cause and making the international public aware of the relevance and the importance of ensuring their rights, and to let the Palestinian people know that we fully support them. In Egypt, we recognize the role of the United Nations in helping a number of states gain independence. In a previous cycle, and Palestine is no exception. Egypt calls upon this committee to highlight the importance of putting an end to Israeli occupation and improve the situation on the ground to lift the siege imposed by Israel on Jerusalem and put an end to settlement building in order to restore trust between the two parties and lead the way to a peaceful solution based on international law, UN resolutions, and agreed international references, Arab Peace Initiative, for example, and the two-state solution. In conclusion, Egypt reiterates the right of the Palestinian people to an independent state within the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as capital, and we are prepared to provide necessary assistance to our brotherly Palestinian people and to help them to work towards reconciliation. We have provided $500 million in the framework of the initiative announced by the Egyptian president in support of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Thank you for your kind attention.
Je remercie
I thank the ambassador and permanent representative of Egypt for his kind words addressed to us, and also for helping support Senegal. I know you've held this role a number of times, and it was perhaps time for Egypt to step aside and allow another country to hold this post in these circumstances. My country was the one to take over this role. So we'd like to thank Egypt for its commitment and support. For the time being on the list, we have Jordan, Tunisia, India, Indonesia, Lebanon, and Turkey, in that order. So let me now give the floor to Jordan. You have the floor.
And first, congratulate you on winning the African Cup. It was a remarkable match, and I congratulate both teams, Senegal and Egypt, for a great performance. I would like to thank the Secretary General Guterres for his statement earlier, which reiterated the long-standing position of the UN towards the Palestinian question and the vision for peace based on the international parameters of the UN and the international community. I would like to congratulate you and the elected members of the Bureau on your election. The committee has been able over many years to play a vital and influential role in mobilizing international support for the Palestinian people and their just cause. It is important that we continue shedding light on the extent of the tragic suffering and the difficult conditions the Palestinians are facing under Israeli occupation, and the grievous injustice inflicted on them, which are an affront to human norms and moral values. The committee has a crucial role in the efforts to alleviate such sufferings and injustice, and you can rest assured of Jordan's full support and cooperation. Mr. Chairman, I would like to highlight the following points today in brief. First, Jordan's unwavering position is to support the just and legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, especially the rights to self-determination and establishing their independent, sovereign, and viable state on the basis of the 4 of June 1967 lines, with East Jerusalem as its capital. We remain committed to peaceful and negotiated settlement on the basis of the two-state solution and in accordance with international law and the relevant UN resolutions. Jordan will continue under the Hashemite custodianships its effort to safeguard and maintain the Islamic and Christian holy sites in East Jerusalem, while supporting the steadfastness of Jerusalemites and preserving the legal status and historical status quo in the holy city. And finally, there can be no peace in the region as long as the occupation continues. Therefore, we need to step up efforts to break the stalemate in the peace process and support measures to rebuild trust and prevent escalations and any violations that could undermine the peace prospects. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank my dear colleague of Lebanon for his kind words and for his statement, and I would like to also express to you the appreciation of the Bureau and of the committee in itself for your contribution to the efforts we are all collectively trying to push in order to promote peace in Palestine and in the region. Thank you. I give the floor to my colleague of Tunisia. Tarek, you have the floor.
Merci, cher frère Sheikh.
Thank you, my dear brother Sheikh, and congratulations on your re-election. And my congratulations to Senegal for the Africa Cup.
سيد الرئيس أود في البداية أن أشكر
Mr. Chair, at the outset, I would like to thank the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, for his tireless commitment to the just Palestinian cause. I would also like to congratulate my brother, Ambassador Sheikh Nyong, permanent representative of Senegal, for his re-election to the head of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. I also congratulate all of the members of the Bureau and wish you every success in your mission. We reiterate our support for the committee's mandate and the concerted efforts being made to allow the Palestinian people to exercise their inalienable rights, in particular the right to self-determination. We support the end of the Israeli occupation and efforts that will allow for a just and viable solution to the Palestinian question with the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state within the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. We reject all practices of the occupying power, in particular violations of international law, and all conventions and treaties in the area of human rights. We took note with great interest of the committee's program of work for 2022. We would like to thank all of those that contributed to putting it together, in particular the Palestine division within the United Nations. We support this program of work for 2022 and we welcome its adoption. We also welcome the committee's policy of openness in its interactions with various United Nations member states and various international and regional organizations, as well as with civil society organizations and organizations that bring together representatives of women and young people. All of this helps raise awareness among the different peoples of the world of the various different dimensions of the Palestinian question. In particular, we support the committee's guidance and its awareness-raising efforts at the international level as to the just Palestinian cause and raising awareness about the serious violations of international law by the occupying power. Equally, we commend the committee's efforts to bolster international solidarity in order to help the Palestinian Authority face the challenges linked to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the interaction that we have seen and events that will take place in 2022. We stand ready to work with the committee and other stakeholders to contribute to the organization of these various international events related to the Palestinian question and the rights of the Palestinian people, rights which are inalienable rights. Lastly, we hope that we will be able to participate in the various events organized by the committee in the context of the 2022 Programme of Work. And once again, we wish every success to the Chair and the members of the Bureau in your noble mission. Thank you very much, Chair. I thank the Ambassador, Permanent Representative of Tunisia, for his kind words and for his statement. Once again, we appreciate the vast contribution of Tunisia to the efforts that we are undertaking. I remind you that we even planned a visit to Tunisia, but due to the effects of the pandemic, we were not able to do that. But all of this demonstrates Tunisia's commitment. Before you took the floor, my friend, the Ambassador of Jordan, spoke as well. I think, as I said, a friendly country, and I would like to once again reiterate all of my thanks to him for his statement.
The next on my list is India, and India will be followed by Indonesia. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the outset, I thank the Secretary General for his gracious presence at the organization meeting of the committee. I congratulate you, Mr. Chair, and the Vice Chairs of the Bureau for your re-election for the 2022 term. I wish you success in your respective roles and assure you of India's support in implementing the Programme of Work which has just been adopted by the committee. Let me at the outset reiterate India's firm and unwavering commitment to the peaceful resolution of the Palestine issue. India has supported a negotiated two-state solution leading to the establishment of a sovereign, independent and viable state of Palestine living within secure and recognized borders, side by side at peace with Israel. India's developmental partnership with the Palestine Authority in its nation-building efforts and our financial assistance to UNRWA are a reflection of the same. We remain deeply concerned by the recent developments in the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Gaza. Violent attacks on civilians have been increasing. Acts of destruction and provocation are continuing. New settlement units are being announced. Resolution 2334 calls upon parties to prevent all acts of violence against civilians, stresses that all settlement activities must cease, and underscores the need to exert collective efforts to launch credible negotiations on all final status issues. Unilateral measures that unduly alter the status quo on the ground undercut the viability of the two-state solution and pose serious challenges to the resumption of peace talks must be eschewed. Let me also reiterate that the international community must send a strong signal against any steps that would prevent the possibility of durable peace between Israel and Palestine in the near future, and encourage the parties to focus on constructive measures which can pave the way for early resumption of direct negotiations on all final status issues. India has consistently called for direct peace negotiations between Israel and Palestine based on the internationally agreed framework, taking into account the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people for statehood and Israel's legitimate security concerns. As a member of this committee, India will continue to support all efforts towards achieving a comprehensive and lasting two-state solution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict and stand ready to contribute constructively to such efforts. Thank you very much once again.
Je voudrais remercier.
I would like to thank the Ambassador Permanent Representative of India for his statement and for his kind words towards the committee, and also express our appreciation for India's commitment to the peace process. That commitment is constant, and we witnessed that once again when the committee went to New Delhi to meet the Indian authorities. And so we were able to experience that commitment firsthand, and we rely on India to continue its efforts in that direction. Thank you.
The floor to our new colleague and friend, the Ambassador of Indonesia. Welcome once again. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Let me begin by congratulating you, Chair, on your re-election as Chairman of the Committee, and to Senegal for the African Cup. I also congratulate my fellow Bureau members for their election. I look forward to working with you closely in undertaking the committee's mandate. Indonesia expresses our sincere appreciation for the Secretary General's statement earlier on the UN's continued commitment in promoting just and lasting peace in Palestine, based on two-state solutions and in line with international agreed parameters. Chair, the committee was established more than 4 decades ago with a purpose to help the Palestinian people to exercise their inalienable rights. But as we gather to hear today, we are so distant from this goal. The situation on the ground remains precarious, as highlighted by the distinguished delegate of Palestine earlier. The Special Coordinator has also warned that without a prospect of realizing a two-state solution, there will be a dangerous collapse and instability. The committee therefore needs to strengthen its engagement and cooperation with all relevant stakeholders. We should also continue to be innovative, mobilizing the international community to help realize the aspiration and protection of the Palestinian people. The international community must also work together to advance the peace process and support the attainment of the two-state solution based on UN resolutions and international law. Chair, let me affirm my commitment to work with all of you in ensuring the fulfillment of the committee's mandate. Finally, I reaffirm Indonesia's unequivocal support and solidarity to the Palestinian people and unwavering commitment to support the independent state of Palestine. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie l'ambassadeur.
I thank the Ambassador Permanent Representative of Indonesia for his statement and thank him for his kind words. Indonesia, as a member of the committee and the Bureau, has already demonstrated several times its commitment to the peace process in Palestine and the Middle East. Not mentioning now what the government is doing to support UNRWA and in other sectors as well. So I would like to express how grateful we are and say that we rely on you for your constant support. I now give the floor to Lebanon. Lebanon will be followed by Turkey and China. Lebanon, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank you, Your Excellency Ambassador Sheikh Niang, and the member of the Bureau of the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of Palestinian People for your continuous efforts in directing the work of the committee. I would like to also congratulate you on your re-election as chair of the committee, as well as the members of the Bureau on their elections, and to thank the Secretary General for his statement. Mr. Chair, the committee has made outstanding efforts to keep the Palestinian question in the spotlight through conferences, seminars, workshops, and activities organized throughout the year, as reflected in the program of work also for 2022. We welcome the committee's continuous efforts to invite and engage civil society figures, among many other activities, to discuss and think about prospects and means for achieving peace, ensuring self-determination and the political rights for the Palestinians, and realizing the two-state solution. We commend the work of the civil society in Palestine, which has successfully increased the attention and the interest of the world and shed a spotlight on the daily struggle of Palestinians. The Israeli practices of house demolitions, uprooting the Palestinians from their homes, arbitrary detention, and daily humiliation and aggression, and the settlements in the neighborhoods of East Jerusalem and in the West Bank are exposed on daily basis thanks to the work of such organizations. Such efforts put the accountability of the Israeli occupying power and the end of impunity as an important condition in any effort to make peace in the region. The latest example is the report of Amnesty International entitled Israeli Apartheid Against the Palestinians, a brutal regime of domination and crime against humanity, which detailed and categorized as crimes against humanity crimes such as the deliberate oppression of and domination of Palestinians, dispossession of Palestinian land and property, administrative detention, torture, and unlawful killing of Palestinians. Mr. Chair, despite all the international efforts, multiple peace initiatives, and the relevant United Nations resolutions, the reality on the ground for Palestinians has worsened over the last 70 years. The cruel reality of the occupation has not changed, from the Israeli military campaigns of aggression on Gaza to the expansionist settlement policy, coupled with Israel's disregard to international law and international humanitarian law. The international community should make it clear that the only way forward in the Middle East is through just, comprehensive, and lasting peace based on international legality, the relevant UN resolutions, and the formula of land for peace rooted in the resolutions 242, 338, and the latest resolution 2334, and by ending occupation. Israel is trying to cover the reality of its occupation by accusing international organizations and NGOs of bias, thus attempting to prevent them from providing help and support to the Palestinians on the ground. The international community should not accept this false narrative, and the international humanitarian organizations and NGOs should continue to do their work without any harassment or disruption. Mr. Chair, we welcome the outcomes of the International Ministerial Conference convened by Jordan and Sweden in Brussels on November 16, 2022, to pledge political and financial support for UNRWA. This conference demonstrated again the international community's recognition of the irreplaceable role UNRWA plays in the lives of Palestinians in the Middle East at a time when the agency is facing increased political attacks to discredit it. We stress on the importance of supporting UNRWA politically and financially, particularly at these times when Palestinians are facing deteriorating socioeconomic conditions aggravated by the spread of COVID-19 pandemic and in Palestine and in regional host countries. And we call on the international community to reiterate its political commitment to the agency and to meet and increase their financial pledges to the agency's core budget needs for 2022 and the following years in a sustained and predictable manner. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the representative of Lebanon for his statement, and thank you for your engagement also to the peace process in the region. We still count on you. I give the floor now to Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the Turkish delegation, I would like to first of all express our most sincere congratulations on your re-election as our chair, and also sincere congratulations on the re-election of His Excellency Ambassadors of Cuba, Nicaragua, Namibia, Indonesia as Bureau members. We would like to assure you, Mr. Chair, and the distinguished members of the Bureau of Turkey's full support in implementing the crucial work of our committee, in implementing the recently adopted program of work, in our joint efforts towards the achievement and exercise of the inalienable rights of the sisterly Palestinian people. We also thank the distinguished Deputy Permanent Representative of the State of Palestine for her statement. Mr. Chair, taking this opportunity, I would like to make the following brief remarks. We condemn all unilateral steps, including arbitrary arrest, illegal settlements, forced evictions, the demolition of houses, and the attempts to change the status of Jerusalem and Haram al-Sharif. These actions are detrimental to the prospect of a two-state solution. We firmly believe that the inter-Palestinian reconciliation process is also an integral to seeding peace in the region. Turkey will continue to support unity among the Palestinian parties, and we urge other member states to do so as well. Furthermore, the international community should support the Palestinian economy. This alone, however, is not enough. Millions of Palestine refugees rely on the life-saving assistance of UNRWA. It is essential that these services continue to be provided in a sustainable, uninterrupted manner. Turkey will continue to support UNRWA's vital work, both financially and politically. And we will continue to support the two-state solution, leading the establishment of an independent, sovereign, and contiguous state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital. Returning to the path of peace negotiations is a priority. To this end, the work of the Quartet must be revitalized. Working towards the two-state solution, two-state vision is a must now. With that, I would like to thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the representative of Turkey for her statement. Through her, I would also like to thank her government for their support to the committee's work. Thank you. On my list now, I have China, Bangladesh, and Venezuela. I give the floor to China.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My congratulations to you on your re-election to the chairmanship of the committee. Likewise, we extend our congratulations to other members of the elected bureau. China would like to thank Secretary General Guterres for the statement just made. China highly appreciates the committee's active performance of its mandate to raise awareness and the focus of the international community on the Palestinian issue. The committee fully supports the people of Palestine to exercise their unalienable right and promote a comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the Palestinian question. The question of Palestine has always been at the heart of the Middle East issue. This year marks the 75th year of the question that remains on the UN agenda. The international community should adhere to the right direction of the two-state solution on the basis of relevant UN resolutions, the principle of land for peace, and other international consensus to make greater efforts to advance the Middle East peace process. Let's hope that 2022 will not be another year without much progress or productivity on this file. China hopes that Palestine and Israel will take the recent high-level contact as an opportunity to continue building momentum, gradually rebuild mutual trust, and restart dialogue on an equal footing as soon as possible. We offer the view that the Palestinian factions should be encouraged to strengthen unity, achieve internal reconciliation through consultation and dialogue, and develop a unified negotiating position. We advocate that enhancing the authority of the Palestinian National Authority, giving it authority to exercise sovereign right in such areas such as security and finance, and achieving effective control over autonomy and the occupied territory. China supports the improvement of Palestinian economy, livelihood, and the humanitarian situation. And China calls on the international community to provide assistance to Palestine through various channels in order to ease the Palestinian financial crisis, help Gaza recover and rebuild, and support the work of UNRWA in the Near East. The parties concerned should lift the blockade and siege on Gaza as soon as possible, safeguards the legitimate rights of the people in the occupied Palestinian territory, and stop settlement expansions, evictions, and forced demolition, as well as violence against civilians and other actions, and these actions undermine mutual trust and intensify conflicts. China calls for the formation of a broad international effort, and we support UN, Arab League, and OIC and other countries of significant influence to take on an more active role. The Security Council should also shoulder its responsibility, enhance the sense of urgency, and take positive actions for just and lasting solution to the Palestinian issue. China calls for the holding of the International Peace Conference led by the UN with the participation of the permanent member of the Security Council and all stakeholders in the Middle East peace process. China has always been a guardian of peace and builder of development in the Middle East. On the question of Palestine, China has always stood for peace, justice, and equity. We support the establishment of a fully sovereign and independent state of Palestine on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, and the peaceful coexistence of Palestine and Israel, and the joint development of the two peoples, the Arab people and the Jewish people. China is ready to work with the international community to practice genuine multilateralism, promote a comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the Palestinian issue, and achieve security, stability, development, and prosperity in the Middle East at an early date. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the distinguished representative of China for his statement and also for their commitment to the work of the committee to carry out the mandate entrusted to it by the Secretary General. And I also thank China for its specific actions to support the Palestinian people. I have two speakers on my list now, Bangladesh and Venezuela, so I give the floor to Bangladesh.
Mr. Chairman, I wish to express my sincere congratulations to you and other Bureau members for being elected today. I commend the work of the committee done in 2021. I also take this opportunity to thank the Secretary General for his strong support to the just struggle of the people of Palestine and also for his statement delivered today. We also welcome the program of work of the committee just adopted. Mr. Chair, Bangladesh has always been supporting the just cause of the people of Palestine and advocating for an independent, viable, and sovereign Palestine state with East Jerusalem as its capital under a two-state solution based on the pre-1967 borders. In 2021 as well, we echoed the voice of the international community for ensuring peace and justice for the Palestinian people and for the lasting solution to the cause of Palestine. Despite continuous efforts by the international community, we have seen a disastrous and horrific year for the Palestinian people in 2021. It was the deadliest year since the 2014 military aggression in Gaza. The Israeli occupying power killed at least 324 Palestinians, including 86 children. Military atrocities, detention and arrest, expansion of illegal settlement, attacks by the settlers, demolitions of homes and structures, terrorizing and causing injuries, destroying properties, etc., were rampant. The Palestinian people were restricted from access to jobs, health, and other services. Mr. Chair, my delegation would like to highlight the following. First, the committee's work towards ensuring accountability of the heinous crimes committed by Israeli occupation forces and the Israeli settlers should be enhanced. We have been seeing continuous aggression and illegal activities of Israeli occupying power only due to our failure in ensuring the accountability of the crimes committed by them. Second, the economic situation of the people of Palestinian territory has remained volatile due to double blow of COVID-19 and blockade and aggression. In this regard, we welcome committee's support to humanitarian response plan launched by the humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, and we expect more engagement of the committee in mobilizing support for UNRWA. Third, while briefing the committee in last December, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights pointed out that the children are most affected in the occupied territories. In the committee's work, we expect special focus on the ill treatment of children and to provide necessary assistance to the children, including mental and psychosocial support to them. Fourth, we commend the committee's advocacy and outreach work with the international community and civil society in the last reporting period. We would like to see further collaboration of the committee in 2022 aimed at garnering political support for the Palestinian people as well as ensuring necessary humanitarian assistance. Mr. Chair, before concluding, I appreciate the gradual expansion of the work of the committee. We urge the committee to work for all right holders and victims of human rights violations with particular attention to marginalized and vulnerable groups. We also urge that the committee will work in partnership with other members of the United Nations family and international human rights mechanisms and the international community. We would like to emphasize that all Palestinians in the occupied territory must be allowed to exercise their rights, and this must be guaranteed by the Israeli authorities. Investigation into the Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the Palestinian people and other Arabs of the occupied territories must also be conducted. I wish an active and fruitful year for the committee and reiterate our support to the committee's efforts in promoting the realization of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including their right to self-determination and to end the Israeli occupation in order to achieve the two-state solution on the basis of pre-1967 borders. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the representative of Bangladesh for his kind words and for his statement, but also for the continued and unwavering commitment of Bangladesh to the work of the committee for the attainment of the rights of the Palestinian people. Thank you once again. Now I give the floor to the last speaker on my list, who is the representative of Venezuela. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. At the outset, we'd like to congratulate you on your election at the head of the committee on the exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. You and the other members of the Bureau can count on the full support of our delegation as you carry out your functions and in your efforts to move forward the mandate and goals of this committee. We also welcome the participation of the Secretary-General at this meeting. This is proof of the importance this organization gives to the Palestinian question and the need to breathe new life into the peace process to put an end to the tragedy. We also welcome the statement by the Ambassador of the State of Palestine. Mr. Chairman, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela reaffirms its position to defend the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and to achieve its national legitimate aspirations. We are committed to continue to work towards a free, independent, and sovereign Palestinian state within pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as capital and as a full-fledged member of our organization. Mr. Chairman, this two-state solution is the only way. It is the most just and lasting and broadly supported by the international community to put an end to one of the most painful conflicts mankind has faced in the past 70 years. Just 2 weeks ago, we heard the priorities of the Secretary-General for 2022. At that time, he underscored the fact that mistrust is now reaching a flashpoint. We agree with that assessment, and that is why we believe it is necessary to adopt measures to promote both a reduction in tensions as well as to restore trust in an environment which will lead to the resumption of necessary political dialogue and credible, serious, and direct negotiations, leading to just, comprehensive, and lasting peace on the basis of the two-state solution, two states living side by side in peace and security. We call on the occupying power not just to meet its obligations in accordance with relevant GA and Security Council resolutions, to put an end to systematic violations of international law, to put an end to its policy of colonial occupation and apartheid, to put an end to the perpetration of crimes against humanity and war crimes against the heroic Palestinian people, but in addition, and most importantly, to put an end to any unilateral approach. We believe that the time has come to stop delaying the necessary measures and to provide international protection to the civilian Palestinian people, and to guarantee that those who are responsible for these atrocious crimes will be held accountable to international justice. We must renew our efforts to guarantee an end to international impunity, which has been perpetrated over time by the government of one of the permanent members of the Security Council, and which encourages the crimes of Israel. Finally, we fully support the program of work, and we will continue to work actively and constructively in this committee to find a just, peaceful, comprehensive and lasting solution to the Palestinian question, and in this way to put an end to both pandemics facing the noble Palestinian people, the COVID-19 pandemic and the pandemic which is the Israeli military aggression. Thank you.
Distinguished representative of Venezuela, thank you for your important statement, and thank you for the strong support of Venezuela to the work of the committee. I think we have now heard all speakers under agenda item 5. I don't see any other one wishing to take the floor. So we can now move on to the last item on the agenda, other matters. Are there anyone who want to take the floor under this agenda item? If there are no other matters to be discussed, I will adjourn the meeting. I would like, before doing that, thank the interpreters for the very important assistance, and also the technical staff for their support. This meeting is adjourned.